Hello, I'm back in the studio and I have once again the amazing opportunity to talk with, I guess I could say, two equally amazing gentlemen. One we've already met, that's Chris Barrett, and one that we're introducing is Paul Farrow. Paul, good afternoon. How are you? And if you could introduce yourself, where you work and what do you do?
Great to see you both. I wish I could be there in the studio with you. I'm head of IT service at the Treasury in the UK. I work out of the Dartington Economic Campus in the Northeast. I spend a fair bit of time down in Westminster and look after our internal platforms, Treasury being a policy-based department. Really thrilled to be here both and cognizant of the amount of expertise there in the studio today.
Thank you. And Paul, I'll ask you first and I'll ask Chris as well. You manage IT. It's interesting that you say IT service, not IT service management. I did notice that. And I'm curious before I do this question, why don't you have management at the end? Is that
Yeah, I think it's probably to allow me to wear a number of hats.
right?
So I am responsible for IT service management.
Mhm.
I also look after product teams, the product practice in the Treasury, and a myriad of other things. So ITSM is part of what I do.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Good. That because I keep meaning to ask you actually because I've had the opportunity to go to your office at Westminster and every time I've got to ask Paul why you don't have management. So very good answer. Thank you, Paul. So in your role, and as we know, IT service management is complex, it's hard. What pressure do you face in IT service management?
I think probably the pressure that most people don't see is not so much about process, it's making defensible trade offs. I think most of us will be aware of the cost, quality, time triangle when you're looking to deliver projects. I find that a lot of time in IT service management, you get decisions that sit between control, speed, and outcomes. And it's very hard, if not impossible, to try and optimize all three. We've got to decide where to accept risk, where we need to slow things down and take it a bit more of a step, and where to speed up. And then we layer in that in an environment where we've got suppliers aligned to contracts. We've got governance and legislation that might prioritize being able to audit things, and then legacy systems that constrain what we can do, the choices that we have. Really, for me, it's around those trade-offs. It's that we can't create perfect systems, but it's trying to make imperfect decisions transparently and accountably.
And yes, this is a plug from my book, but that's exactly what my new book says, Paul, is that the distortion of experience, it's very hard to create a good experience in a complex system that is complex because of technical debt and other things, but because we've got regulatory requirements, governance, so much, it's very difficult to do that. And I think that's where a lot of our users don't really appreciate or understand. And sometimes we can't give them a great experience. Unfortunately, that's just how it is. Yeah. Chris, from where you sit and from your level, what pressure does IT service management face?
I think we're back to that translation layer again, aren't we?
Translation?
Yeah, or back to demonstrating the value. So I'm fascinated with Paul there. You're making decisions, you're making priority calls. Are you doing it on a cost basis, a customer experience basis, or a value basis? Because what I'm talking about here is the layer of translation between that operation, the IT services, and value to the organization. Now, it doesn't have to be a PE portfolio company. That can easily be a public sector organization that measures its own value. So you'll be making those value calls. I'd be fascinated to hear how value is part of that discussion. How is that part of the decision-making process?
So I think that's a really good point. And there's probably a spectrum across government. We talked a bit on the Green Book previously, but in government, really, that's between the Green and Magenta books. We've got a whole range of coloured books in government. The Green Book's more about the early side on what we're going to do, how we prioritise investments, and government will look at that value, not in terms of EBITDA like you might do in a private organisation, but more in terms of is the cost value for money. What are the societal outcomes that we're intending to produce? The Magenta Book is there about making sure that we follow up and have achieved what we intend to achieve. This becomes a lot more complex in some of the policy-driven departments, I think, in central government, where we're not delivering citizen-facing services, etc. And if you look at those policy-driven departments, actually, what is the product that we're producing? Where's the value that's being delivered? And a lot of the time, that's in decisions and analysis. So for me, it's about how does IT enable us to make more effective decisions? How does that improve the outcomes of those decisions, the speed to those decisions, and the quality of those decisions? And I'm not sure that there's an effective framework really to dashboard that effectively. And so it makes some of the value conversations very difficult. Most of that still roots around cost and how much of the budget we're taking up.
And is that in line with?
Yeah, you got my mind racing there, Paul, because there's a translation layer there that probably, we talk about EBITDA, we talk about private companies and investment scenarios and whole periods. For public sector, that's different. So you're going to have different value triggers, different value metrics, things that will be useful if it was standard across the piece, and whether it's UK government or beyond. But an understanding of this is what value means. This is a bigger pull on value than X versus Y. And then you've got something material to actually make decisions on. Otherwise, there's a lot of opinion in there. There's lots of, I can imagine in certain departments, who shouts loudest or what the current zeitgeist actually is. So pulling back to something that is a value accounting standard, but for citizen-facing decisions and also policy-facing decisions would actually be something hard to fall back on, rather than actually going through that, how much value are we getting out of this piece of IT versus this piece of IT, or this program versus this program? That's going to be incredibly hard without that. So my mind started racing.
Yeah, it'd be absolutely intriguing, wouldn't it, to work that out? Yeah, absolutely. Paul, we talked about that your background, behavioural psychology, and here you are running an IT department. Interesting. How does that help you?
Yeah, so I guess for context, I graduated in psychology many years ago now, but it's always been something that stuck with me. I've had an interest in user design, in how we nudge people through design to do certain things and the impact on that around us. I think a lot of that was probably piqued by my degree, by some of the pop culture podcasts and books out there like Freakonomics, but also by the work of Don Norman, who some affectionately refer to as the grandfather of user design these days. I'm quite sure how he feels about that. And there's a great concept that, and I think we see this in many areas, but that he coined and takes his name, but Norman doors. And if you're familiar with this, once you see it, it's a bit like the veil has been lifted and I cannot see them go anywhere without seeing them now. But in theory, a door should be really simple. You go up to the building, you open the door, you go in. You shouldn't have to think about it. But frequently we'll find doors that are designed where Don Norman called these affordances and signifiers, but basically how the door looks, how you assume it should work, what signs there are around to tell you how it works. Good design, you should be intuitive. You should be able to see the handle, know that you pull it, walk in and open the door. There are some doors in many of the buildings that I work in that have a handle each side, but only open in one direction. Go up to the door, you go to push it, doesn't work, you've got to pull it. Go along any high street, you'll see this. And I think we see this in IT frequently. Things are not necessarily designed with the way that they work, and then we have to build more and more signage around them to tell you how to operate things.
Absolutely. And as I said to you, Paul, I had the opportunity to meet Don Norman. We were in India. And he's a very interesting character. And of course, embarrassingly, I asked if I could have a selfie with him. And I wouldn't say he didn't say no, but he said he wouldn't look at the camera. I had to converse with him. And he does a lot of lecturing now, and he's very about sustainability. He's very passionate about that in his later years. But yeah, I was in a lift, as I said, in India where we were staying, and he got in and I'm like, no. And I said, good morning. And as soon as he spoke, so we struck up a conversation. He's a lovely man. And for those that haven't read his book and know of him, please do, because as you said, Paul, there's a lot of lessons we can learn in IT service management, what should be damn simple, such as opening a door, such as, dare I say, logging an incident, resetting a password, should be pretty easy and intuitive. Choosing a category from your service catalog should be easy. So yeah, there's a lot of lessons, as I said, we can learn. What I'd like to ask you next, both of you, Chris, I'll go to you first. If you said to the head of, I don't know, someone in IT, let's say the service desk manager, give me some reports, please. But you said you're not allowed to, I don't want to see the number of incidents. I don't want to see the number of tickets. I don't want to see failed changes. What do you think they'd give you if they didn't have our traditional? Do you think they could? What do you think?
What a question. They're going to be stumped, aren't they? They're stumped. And then they fall back to what they know and what they're doing a very good job on. It will be tickets, time to response, media response. Yeah, that will be a meaningless conversation unless I can actually produce something alongside and say, yeah, you realize that the dashboard you've got, this is what you're doing for the organization. Everything you've just mentioned, those 5 metrics here, contribute to this, and therefore the value of the organization. That becomes a different conversation quickly. But if you just ask them, we're missing Eli again. They don't have the tools or the language to describe what they do, which is valuable, hugely valuable at an operational level, but cannot be translated currently into enterprise value.
And Paul, I'll say, I wonder if you agree. Spot on. I don't think that most people in IT, and it's not a criticism, I think that we are rewarded by what we've been taught. So we're rewarded by speed, compliance. What teaches us is frameworks, tooling, maturity assessments, etc., etc. So to Chris's point, like if you asked your team or for some IT reports and you said, but I don't want to see the traditional metrics, how do you think your team would go?
I think you'd be taking most of our Power BI estate out off the table right away and bring it down to quite a narrow field. We do have some experience and sentiment that we measure, and I think that's increasingly becoming important with the rise of digital employee experience tooling, understanding what people do, feel, or how the estate's behaving. And there's really a more modern layer there. But most of what we do, and I think this comes back to Chris's point on that, is a translation problem. ITSM will often report on SLAs, ticket volumes, activity, which is great for the language we speak. It's great for the dashboards we want to look at, but we're not producing dashboards that senior management, the boards, necessarily care about outcomes, productivity, risk within IT service management frequently. And I guess we're measuring what's easy, not necessarily what correlates with the success of the organization.
And again, and you're right about employee experience. So I'll do a bit of a plug for Next Think. Our friends at Next Think, they're amazing what they do. As you know, I'm an ITIL master. I kind of challenge sometimes because ITIL kind of does tell us to do that. And again, I think it's that translation. It's always all about your outcomes to the business. I mean, that's what my ITIL Masters is about. And I work for Qantas, and we did start introducing, rather than incidents, what did that incident cause? It was a delayed plane. That's what executives care about.
Dollars attached to it. Exactly.
Exactly. And but again, like to your point, Paul, we go with what we know. And again, it's not a criticism. And I say also, we still need those metrics. We don't say throw them away. We absolutely need them. But it's if the audience who, as I said, executives do not care about how many failed changes that there were for incidents and things like that. What did that mean to the business? And are toolings configured to do that? Probably no, because we haven't configured them to do that. And I think this is such a huge opportunity with guys like you that are bringing this much needed awareness and change.
Well, it's not hard to join the dots, though. This is where I'm coming from. So, Paul, you mentioned customer experience. You'll have, whether it's NPS, ENPS, but you'll have scores that say, yeah, we are satisfied or not satisfied with the IT service we're getting. Let's reverse that all the way back. It's exit interviews. How many exit interviews mentioned how the IT didn't work for me? It was a real pain. It stopped me doing my job. Not many, hopefully, but if it does, then you've actually got a different metric into play here, and that's like regretted attrition. So people that leave in the organization that you really didn't want to leave. Now, if you're training that, you're improving people's experience and how much they enjoy working for an organization. Yeah, of course, IT is going to be part of that. Giving people the tools to do a good job is part of the job satisfaction and what they take away. So that's IT enabling it, but we haven't joined the dots here. That one's quite a stretch, but yeah, how people enjoy working in an organization, part of that's got to be, my kit works, the Wi-Fi works, Teams works for me, and hopefully a big platform that actually works, an operational platform, the CRM, the ERP, that's all working beautifully for me, and therefore I enjoy working for this company. There's part to it there. No, it's not everything. It's not a one-for-one match, but it's a contributor. And that's where you think, just keeping the lights on, it's more than that. You're contributing to employee satisfaction. Employee satisfaction contributes to reduced churn, reduced attrition, which contributes to P&L. We're back to HR and we're back to Mercer again.
But I'll give listeners something that I learned to, again, I refer to Qantas. I asked the head of the contact center for a list of a report of customer complaints by passengers. And he said to me, but Kat, no one's ever asked this. And they're not really IT issues. I said, can I have a look, please? And that was a really big change for me, how I approach service management, because at the end of the day, we're here for customers' loyalty. And I know your situation is a bit different, Paul, but I think a lot of similarities. And if we want to be innovative, so for example, a lot of the customer complaints was they weren't aware of the excess baggage fees. Now, IT can innovate that if we know what our customers are talking about, but IT never gets this data. And as you said, Chris, the data is there. We just never ask for it. And we can connect the dots. And again, that translation layer of education and understanding of what's important. So as I said, it's just a really good, interesting thing. And I think everybody should know what your customers are saying about your organization. IT people should be aware of that. That should be what they want to do. As I said, not that how many failed changes there were. Who cares? How can we make that experience for our customer better through innovation in IT? Yeah.
100%.
Right. All right. Just to wrap up, just got a few questions. Just trying to find the most trickiest. I did say IT service management is working exactly as designed. We designed it. However, I ask this question every time I speak at conferences, every time I do a webinar, put it in the chat, write it down. I ask IT people, what do you think the business thinks of IT? And 95% of the responses are negative. Complex, cost center, don't understand us, etc., etc. Paul, how can we change this?
I think this comes from how we design the services around people, ultimately. Most IT are really designed to work, but not actually work for people. And we expect that people interact with technology, but actually people are interacting with technology. Technology problems are essentially human problems. People are designing with what we've designed around the technology, the workflows, approvals, desk interactions. We construct that reality. Now, there are constraints with what technology does, but users, customers, they don't experience what we intend. They experience friction, ease, delay, confidence. So I guess for me, it's really about making sure we involve them in the design of some of those processes, what works for them, so that, as Chris comes back to, we design a better employee experience. That translates into happier, more productive employees. We look at the reality. Apologies, I'm going to pick up here. There's a great concept I love about desire paths and how we intend things to work, but actually where people go. You'll see this at the corners of roads where a straight path meets a road. People cut across and it creates a warm path. Michigan University in America, when they've designed their paths, they didn't build the paths originally. They watched where people walked across campus. Google it, find the photo. It's absolutely beautiful to look at from a design perspective. And then when they saw where people actually walked, they built the paths there. And for me, that's where we need to meet the user at the point of their reality.
Yeah. And Paul, that goes back to what we say in Humanising IT, is if we create a poor experience, it's not the framework's fault, because the framework was not built for experience. And I'll dig my heels in on that. It was built to manage technology efficiently, to provide value to the business. It was not designed for experience. And again, that's why I wrote my new book, The Distortion of IT Service Management. Because, ITIL and frameworks are doing exactly what they were meant to do, and they're doing it good. And we have to be careful of overextending frameworks. And what I personally feel is then diluting their value. And we need to be very, very careful at. And as I often say, if we stop talking about operations and start talking about all the other things that's coming out, who's looking after operations? We need to be very, very careful, very careful. But conversely, it's a really good opportunity for a need to change. So thank you, Paul, for that. There was really, I think, about 4 golden nuggets in what you said, and I'm going to replay those and do a post on them. That was great, actually. And Chris, finally, before we wrap up, hard or easy question?
You pick. Go ahead.
Okay, let me think. I want to do a hard one. Where is IT service management going to be in 2 years? What? Because I believe, as you know, it hasn't really changed in 40 years. Where's it going to be in 2 years? Are we at this stage?
There's different aspects to that. One is where I think it's going to be with respect to, AI, cyber, ESG, all of those things will be the next gen. We know that. That's not where I'm coming from. I'm hoping that it becomes, or is on the journey to becoming a value-based organization.
No.
Where, the CIO turns up to board with a trust scorecard and says things like, this quarter, I've generated 6 million in enterprise value. I've done it these ways. You understand that? And below that, I've got another layer that I understand even better. Impact on your EBITDA, my regulatory exposure, ESG exposure. And below that, I've got my metrics that you don't want to see. That was 3 years ago. Okay. Now I'm talking value. So if we're on the path to doing that, because we build a translation layer, then it's a step forwards.
And it's conversations like these. I love that you say we're a value-based organization. We're not an IT department.
And it's what Paul was saying as well. There's a feedback loop in there. So just delivering good IT service, you don't get the plaudits for it. You get the negativity attached to cyber issues and system issues and availability issues. But everyone is keeping that IT service running smoothly, world-class or otherwise, is actually generating value. But if that was visible to the guys on the service desk, visible to the guys in ops and infra, then that becomes a little bit more enjoyable. They get the feedback.
Exactly.
So you've contributed to the value of the organization.
Yeah.
Technical debt is an obvious one, but at other areas, you've contributed to employee satisfaction. You've contributed to
Growth.
P&L growth. Yeah. But you do it these ways. So do this, do it well. You're doing a great job. But it's not just you in your bunker, in your engine room. It's you adding value to the organization.
Yeah, absolutely.
And board gets it. Well, for me, that's a great bit of feedback for her.
Well, let's hope that conversation changes maybe sooner than 2 years. As I said, through advocacy and the work that you guys are doing, conversation is starting. So thank you both. It's been an absolute pleasure. And I want to do this again. So we'll see you soon. And listeners, links below. And you message you on LinkedIn, Paul and Chris. Happy to take any feedback.
Keep the conversation going.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys. See you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.